All right, let's dive right into this explainer and uncover a story that honestly sounds like a Hollywood thriller, but is playing out in the real world as we speak. We're going to look at how a heavily sanctioned, completely isolated nation managed to transform itself into a digital superpower, purely to fund its own survival. We're talking, of course, about North Korea and their incredibly sophisticated, decade-long campaign of stealing cryptocurrency.
To really grasp the scale of what we're dealing with here, I want you to imagine being a cybersecurity analyst over in Singapore. It's 8:34 a.m. on February 21st, 2025. You're just doing a routine check, watching transactions flow through Ethereum's blockchain, and then you see it. $1.5 billion. This absolutely mind-boggling sum just vanishes from a cold wallet, a highly secure, completely offline vault belonging to Bybit, which is one of the world's largest crypto exchanges. It moves to an unknown address in a single transaction. The signature is perfectly valid. The funds are just gone.
Section 1, the ultimate crypto heist. Now, we're not talking about some minor technical glitch here. This was the largest crypto heist in human history, and it was executed with chilling elegance. The mechanics are fascinating and, yeah, a little terrifying. The hackers didn't just smash the proverbial window and grab the cash. They meticulously compromised a specific signing device used by a top executive at Bybit. They waited for the absolute perfect moment, completely bypassed the internal security alarms, and siphoned the whole thing. A single transaction drained that entire cold wallet, moving the funds into a multi-signature wallet that requires multiple approvals to access. And when blockchain investigators finally traced that wallet, the trail led straight back to Pyongyang. Section 2. Meet the Lazarus Group.
You know that classic movie trope of a lone, rogue hacker sitting in a dark basement wearing a hoodie? Yeah, you can completely forget that. The Lazarus Group is a state-sponsored cybercrime syndicate. They are a literal, critical arm of the North Korean government, reporting directly to their intelligence agency, the Reconnaissance General Bureau. Obviously, North Korea doesn't have a Silicon Valley or a tech startup culture, but what they do have is a highly structured, highly lethal hacking army. In fact, this cyber army is estimated to be around 6,000 people strong. That's basically the size of a small military division. And they run this operation like a legitimate Fortune 500 company. Divided up into these highly specialized subgroups, you've got the Lazarus Group itself focusing on crypto and exchanges. Then there's Blue Noroff targeting traditional financial institutions. You have Andriel going specifically after South Korean government networks, and Kim Zuki handling international espionage. It's just an incredibly professional, compartmentalized machine. And this is where it gets incredibly surreal. We all know North Korea is heavily sanctioned and struggles to even feed its own citizens, right? But these hackers live a completely different reality. They get elite perks, they're recruited straight out of top universities, trained in state-sponsored academies, and they're the best paid people in the country. We're talking free housing, free food, and absolute state protection. Over in Pyongyang, a hacker isn't viewed as a criminal at all. They are literally hailed as national heroes. Which brings us to Section 3, a decade of digital theft. Now, they didn't just wake up one day and steal $1 billion. This has been an evolution. They went from traditional bank robberies to completely ruling the blockchain. It actually started relatively small, well, small for them, back in 2016, when Lazarus hacked the Central Bank of Bangladesh for $81 million by exploiting SWIFT payment protocols. But they quickly figured out that cryptocurrency was the ultimate target. Bitcoin is borderless, Monero is untraceable, Ethereum is programmable. By 2018, they were hitting exchanges like Bithum for $30 million. Then, boom, a massive leap in 2022 with the Axie Infinity Ronin Bridge hack, where they walked away with a staggering $620 million. And of course, that straight up escalated to the $1.5 billion Bybit hack in early 2025. But you know what makes them truly dangerous? It's not just the complex coding. It's how they constantly adapt and exploit us. Human error. Take a look at this example from 2024. Lazarus took down an entire Japanese crypto exchange and bagged $100 million. How did they do it? By sending an employee a weaponized PDF. It was literally just a fake resume for a job candidate who didn't even exist. An employee opened it, and the entire exchange was compromised, just like that. And the math here is honestly terrifying. Look at this exponential growth in their annual theft. They go from bagging $80 million in 2016 up to $620 million in 2022, and then pulling in $1.5 billion in literally just the first 2 months of 2025. The takeaway is pretty clear. The regime is getting much more desperate, and the hackers are getting significantly better. Section 4. The Arts of Money Laundering. Okay, but stealing the crypto is really only half the battle. Because the blockchain is a public ledger, meaning everyone can see exactly where the stolen funds are sitting. Cleaning that digital money so it can actually be spent in the real world, that is a completely different dark art. Their laundering operation follows a ruthless, highly technical three-step playbook. First, compromise and drain the wallets. Second, layer the funds. They use decentralized finance platforms, splitting the money into thousands of tiny wallets, passing it through mixers like Tornado Cash, or converting it into privacy coins like Monero. And then step 3, they cash out. They use peer-to-peer exchanges and underground Chinese over-the-counter brokers, basically anybody willing to process transactions without asking pesky know-your-customer questions.
So, Section 5, funding the Kim regime.
We have to pause here and ask the single most important question of this explainer. What is all this stolen digital currency actually buying? Since 2016, this rogue state has amassed a staggering $3 billion in stolen cryptocurrency. Let that sink in for a second. $3 billion. For a country living under the most severe sanctions on the planet, with no oil, no natural gas, and frozen exports, this is an absolute massive war chest. It's actually more than their entire official export revenue.
Because this isn't about some criminal getting rich. It is entirely about regime survival. As researchers point out, without stealing this crypto, the regime would be forced to choose between feeding its people and funding its weapons. And the UN estimates North Korea spends between $1.5 and $2.5 billion annually on its weapons and nuclear missile programs. The sanctions successfully cut off their legitimate revenue. So, forced to make a choice, they choose weapons every single time.
Section 6, an unstoppable global threat. With billions of dollars directly funding nuclear weapons, you'd think the international community would have shut this down by now, right? Well, despite the stakes, the global response has been huge, but shockingly ineffective. The U.S. has tried hundreds of sanctions, unsealed indictments, even offered $5 million rewards for information. But nobody claims those rewards, and the sanctions leak like a sieve. South Korea has tried a different angle, building a dedicated cyber command to monitor IP ranges and intercept comms. But honestly, even that is just an endless game of whack-a-mole. The hackers simply adapt faster than the defenders can patch the security holes. And the reason law enforcement is struggling so much is chillingly simple. These hackers do not travel. They literally never leave Pyongyang. They operate remotely from the safety of government buildings, relying on VPNs and complicit networks in places like Russia, China, and Iran. The U.S. Department of Justice can file all the criminal charges they want, but these guys face absolutely zero risk of arrest or extradition. For all intents and purposes, they are digital ghosts.
Which leaves us with a pretty stark reality to close out on. That $1.5 billion stolen from Bybit, that's going to buy more missile technology, more materials for centrifuges, and keep the regime afloat for another year. And next year, they're going to try to steal another billion. As long as this regime desperately needs cash to survive, anyone who uses a centralized exchange or even just stores their keys online is a potential target. So can the international community ever build a wall around the blockchain to stop them? Because right now, that wall doesn't exist. The money keeps flowing out, and you better believe the next attack is already being planned.